Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Heritage. And on today's episode, we are looking at the mountains of Armenia, where there is a monastery tucked into the foliage on this mountainous landscape. And we are going to talk all about it because, one, it's beautiful, and two, it's got a bunch of interesting history associated to it, doesn't it?
Yep. So this is the Monastery of Geghard and the Upper Azat Valley. It is a very interesting compound of churches and tombs, most of which are cut into the mountain itself. Like the structure we see here, this is the one of the very few surface structures that there are, but most of it, if you can look to the left side of the photo, there's these little tiny like almost doorways in the rocks. Those aren't doorways. That's just people carving into the mountain and making new passages for tombs and other such religious functions.
I love it because that to me is one of the most humanistic features is just seeing a landscape and going, I could do something here. And carving into a mountain is one of the easiest ways to build any sort of foundation or building because you just remove the rock on the inside of where you want to live.
Yeah, it's the we see a giant stone wall and think, let's bore a hole in that.
And it's beautiful. I mean, you see intricate archways, beautiful reliefs carved into the stone. I mean, they really did make it as ornate as they possibly could, and that is honestly one of the cool aspects of it, in my opinion.
And they had about 900 years to do this, so they definitely had the time to go and make it pretty because this compound was under construction, shall we say. Most of the monuments and rock tombs and all of that date from the 4th to the 13th century. So it's a lovely little 900-year period where it actually went by a different name for most of that time. It was originally known as uh, Arivank, which is I can't say it, but basically it translates as the monastery in the cave because the original monastery had no above surface structures. It was just carved into the side of the mountain, and you went into the mountain to do your prayers and do your monastery
You
work.
can actually see some of this in the photos because in photo number 8, you see the original concave where a lot of the religious things were performed. And then in photo 9, you see the more modern, ornate, gilded altar and everything that is more associated with the new above ground features. It's just a really interesting connection of the two. And even on the roof, you could see all these intricate stone carvings that display on the roof there.
Yep. It's very well done. And what's uh, what's particularly interesting about it is some of the people who are buried here is kind of interesting. They've got a number of of some family tombs of the Prussian princes, which were a excuse me, uh, sort of this major like local dynasty in this region of Armenia. These were the rulers of this, not all of Armenia, but this section of it.
I mean, when you have something this ornate and this detailed, this beautiful, this important, because you're not going to spend this amount of time carving out a landscape in an area that's not important, you see just how highly valued it is.
Yep. It is beautiful. There's a lot of moving parts to this. Uh so much, you know, so much so that it's like almost impossible to keep track of it even on the nicely listed UNESCO page. Because we've got the Prussian dynasty is buried here. We've got a 13th century defensive wall to fortify the monastery against the monastery's many enemies.
Which is a lot because a lot of raiders would easily go to monasteries because that's where you would see an accumulation of wealth. Mainly because the monasteries, a lot of the monks would write texts, they'd sell those off. They would also produce wines, other meads, and they would sell that to help fund their monastery and to help fund their religious organization.
Also, fun fact: Mongolians.
Yeah, a lot of
It's
Mongolians.
it's the third. It's the third. The walls are 13th century. That is the Mongolian horde has arrived in Armenia. Is
So
what that says.
it's very interesting, and this is a site that has been inhabited for many, many decades, and you can see that, and it's very cool to see how these sites evolve, how they grow. You know, you see the origins of them being in the caves and carving them out to building the structures, and that's what leads it to have a lot of integrity, because you see how this medieval monastery had been in such a remote area with great beauty, and how not much has really changed in it, because there are strict controls over any sort of development and change. So they try to really protect it because it's this isolated bubble in the mountains. However, one of the things that's very interesting and leads to it potentially being at risk is the fact that it's in a very seismically active zone, and that there's a high risk of rock slides along with just people. We talk about this ad nauseum, but there's a lot of impacts that humans bring with them with tourism. You have to have facilities for them, not to mention large amounts of people can have impacts to these old structures that may have not been built to support that many people at one time.
Yeah, and a big thing with that tourism is it seems to be a combination of both local and international tourism because of the unique history of this particular monastery on top of its beauty. This monastery was a library, a school, a scriptorium. It is where the a group of historians, the Ara Venetsi family, uh, lived, and it's where a form of Armenian art was actually developed and proliferated from. So this is a cultural spawning ground. On top of that, it was a very popular place for holy relics to reside. A number of 12th century visitors gifted relics of numerous apostles: Thaddeus, Andrew, John. There's there's even a holy spear that actually gives its name to one of the many little churches and temples up here, the Geghard Davank.
It's just very interesting because one of the reasons why this has been so well preserved is because of its continuous use, but also because all of the constructions included in the project are not threatened because they meet certain conservation challenges. They're results of scientific research, renovation, fortification, designs, and preventative measures. And there have been some areas that have been fully restored, including a wall that collapsed and had been renovated in 2006 and 7 using the original materials and the original construction techniques. So there are ways to preserve in place, even if the original structure may not have been in the best condition.
Yeah, yeah, it's clearly worth doing with the you just take a look at any one of the pictures, you can clearly see it. Like this is something that is unique and is beautiful, and that is more than enough for us as the human race to say that should stand for all of time.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about it is a lot of the site management for this site goes through specialized councils that discuss all of the aspects of it, including registration, study, protection, fortification, restoration, reconstruction, and the usage of the historical monuments. So they really do care about how the property is managed, and they are also protected by law, which is another great thing we like to see.
Yeah.
The interesting thing in my mind is the Armenian Apostolic Church still is the owner, or the diocese is the owner.
Yep. Yeah, it is still owned by the church. It has remained church land. It has been church land for the past 1600 to 1700 years, and it's probably going to stay that way for a hell of a lot longer.
The budget is partially subsidized through the state budget, but also with help of entrepreneurial activities and private donations. So like I said, the monks of the monastery have business practices that they do and actively participate in to keep money rolling in so they can keep the structure alive and working and running. And it's such a cool site. It's right in the heart of, I believe this is the Caucasus.
This would be the Caucasus Mountains. Yes, yeah, this is the. It should be the Caucasus up doing the border between what the Black and Caspian Seas.
Yeah. So it's very, very cool, and it's an interesting site, and I thought it was worth us looking at and talking about. I think that's probably actually a great point for us to wrap up this episode. If you guys have any thoughts, let us know in the comments down below, and we will see you in the next video.